This is about the dumbest. Listen, y'all, I got 2 clips for y'all. Check this out.
You truly, in your heart of hearts, truly believe that this is a human being. This,
without a doubt.
Without a doubt?
Yes.
This is a dolphin fetus.
So let me...
Without a doubt, a dolphin fetus is a human being. This is a human being. This is how similar they are. But quite different. Dolphin, you just confirmed that a dolphin, in life, you confuse dolphins for human babies often.
So let me
you go to SeaWorld and you're like, someone's got human babies in that aquarium.
All right, family, let me get into this, okay? First of all, I'm not here to debate whether it's a human or a fetus. I honestly think that debate has gone so far off the rails and it's starting to miss a very key, important point. Reality. You ever heard of that? Do y'all remember that? This man's belief that it was a human baby is still valid, regardless of the trick. The issue isn't about him confusing a dolphin fetus for a human. The point he was making is whether you agree with him or not, was that he believes life begins in the womb. Tricking someone into thinking that it was a dolphin doesn't change the principle of what the man was standing on. I swear this stuff is making us dumber and dumber. Like I said, I'm not here to argue when life begins or whether the fetus is a baby. But I'll say this. It's highly offensive to women who have experienced miscarriages to suggest their loss wasn't as important because it was just a fetus. Now imagine that. Telling a woman who just lost her baby miscarried. It wasn't a human anyway. No, they will experience loss just as any other mother would. The father of the child will experience loss just as any other father would. We don't get to pick and choose when this argument becomes valid and when it becomes invalid. It's disrespectful, man. It's not just inconsiderate, it's actually cruel, man. So whether you believe it's right to terminate a pregnancy or not, you cannot argue that something isn't a life simply to avoid acknowledging that terminating a life or terminating it is ending that life. You have your rights, but let's not make foolish arguments, family. All right? If a woman chooses to terminate pregnancy, that's her legal right. But let's not deny the reality of what's really happening here. One of the comments in the video said, well, is it a tree? Is a seed a tree? And people are in there like, you're right. I never thought about it like that. Let me clarify something, guys. The sperm is the seed. A fetus, if we want to extend this metaphor, is like a sprout or a small plant. So yes, it's still a plant. It's still life. These arguments that try to eliminate or diminish the reality of life desensitizes us. They disconnect us from the seriousness of life and the decisions that we make around it. So what are we going to say? That a woman who has miscarried, that they didn't lose a baby, they just lost a fetus, so it's not that important? What about when someone fatally harms a pregnant woman? Are you going to argue that they only took one life because the fetus isn't a baby? That the sentencing shouldn't be heavier because it was just a fetus and not a baby yet? I mean, just think about how silly and heartless that sounds. We're losing our sense of reality in these debates. We're becoming desensitized, not just to life itself, but to each other. We need to step back and see that at the core of all these arguments, family, it's a human life. Whether you believe it's a baby or a fetus, the fact is, it's life. Now, if you're wondering why I'm saying that, let's listen to this next clip.
Big Trevor, 27.
27. How come you didn't say 28?
Because I'll be 20 in 2 weeks.
But if life begins at conception, you're 10 months older than that, and you actually are 28. Why don't you say 28?
So that's the way we categorize birthdays.
That's the way you celebrate your life. That's the way we acknowledge life. That's the way we cut. The birthday begins when you are born.
So I'll let
if
you
life begins at conception,
if
life begins at conception, you would count your life from the moment that egg was fertilized, when you were the size of a poppy seed. But you don't, because you don't actually believe that it is a human life. If you're building a cake, baking a cake, you take the ingredients, When that cake is done, you got a cake. No one's saying it's a cake when it's ingredients that will become, after baking, a cake. And if you throw that cake away because it doesn't come out properly into ever being a cake, you don't say, man, you just threw away a perfectly good cake. No, you say, that cake never became a cake.
So even in this one, there's a guy in the comments that says, the cake analogy is brilliant, but he still doesn't get it. It's got over 3,919 reactions on it. The cake analogy is brilliant, but he still doesn't get it. Listen, man, he asked him how old he was, right? And he asked him, why didn't he say he was a different number? Now, what he's trying to point out is that we go by birthdays, not conception dates. So if your birthday is traditionally celebrated like it is now at the moment you're born, that becomes your birthday. When someone says, how old are you? You tell them how many birthdays you've had, right? That's how we count this, right? So again, he's trying to disqualify the guy by saying, why didn't you count that conception? Because traditionally we don't do that. You asked my birth date, not my conception date. So yeah, you would add about 9 to 10 months if we're talking about conception date, but that has no weight on the reality of if it's a life. I mean, let's think about how silly this sounds. And to say that, well, the cake analogy is brilliant. This man said if you throw away a cake that failed, a cake that didn't come out right, no one would say, damn, you threw away a perfectly good cake. Of course they wouldn't. Just as if your child miscarried, you can't raise it. No one's going to say, you did something to a perfectly good child. Things happen. It's so wild. You can't say that this thing is not a cake in the making. So you might say, well, okay, the cake analogy is brilliant. How so? How so? Because if it's brilliant, then what you are saying is, if a woman miscarries, it's not that deep. Why is she so hurt then? Why is the family so hurt by that? Ask the woman, ask the husband and wife who's been trying to have children over and over, and they cannot due to miscarries and issues. Ask the mother and father who lost their child in the womb for some other unforeseen thing. Ask any family member who's ever lost a mother or a woman in their life that was carrying a child. These arguments are insensitive, man, and they're far from even proving whatever point you're trying to make. All that to win a debate. And the problem, what's crazy to me, is people are so aloof, they actually think the man won the debate. They're in the comments like, oh, he got him, he showed him up. He made him look stupid. To argue that because he thought that was a human fetus and it was a dolphin, to argue that that somehow invalidates his belief that it's life and should be treated as important as a human life, the fact you think that is crazy. That's like saying, if I believe human lives are important, okay, I see a person, what appears to be a person in the far distance, and I believe that's a human. If I'm wrong, now my beliefs are now invalid. Come on, man. And again, this is not to come down on anyone who terminates a pregnancy. If it's legal in your state, whatever the case may be, and you have that right, that's your right. Nobody can take that from you. But to try and, disqualify it being a human life or human or life, it's like you're trying to avoid the accountability of what you're actually doing here. You have every right to make the decision for yourself. Nobody can take that from you. Only these laws can. You understand? But let's just be honest about the situation. What y'all think, man? Put it in the comments. And please do not tell me y'all believe this man won that debate with those foolish arguments. Peace.